And now it's my pleasure to call past President Reg Smith from the club's vocational service panel to outline the order of the day. Thank you.
Today, it's my privilege to introduce Nick Pelham, who's going to be the moderator of today's conversation. Didn't start quite out like a conversation about artificial intelligence, but once you start talking about it and once you see how topical it is in the media right now, there's little else people want to talk about. And that's certainly, it's been an absolute thrill to see the way the panel has embraced this. And I think you're in for a cracker of a conversation today. So I think people know Nick pretty well. He's featured in a couple of vocational panels in the past. This time he's got the job of moderating. And he's, as you well know, I think, Nick is a genuine project management expert with a PhD in the discipline, and he's been involved extensively in major infrastructure and change projects. And I think it's safe to say Nick has seen it all, and he will certainly do a good job today, I'm sure. So this conversation is going to give us a glimpse, and let's not take too much more of your time, Nick. Why don't you come up and take control of the meeting and introduce the panel members?
Thanks, everyone, and what a great start to the year. We're talking about the people who actually make up this club and talking about, I reckon, the hottest topic that's going to be around for many, many, many years. And but just to sort of think, do you know it's over a month since Christmas Day? And in only a week and a half, Taylor Swift will become the hottest thing in Melbourne. 3 tickets, top dad, there you go, nailed it. So we're going to be talking about technology today, and you have to go and find some quotes on this sort of stuff because technology's always been there. So I went to a book that you might know by Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. And this was a quote that he said, it wasn't his book, but it's something that he came up with. He says, "I've come up with a set of rules that describe our reactions to technology." And there's 3 points. First one, anything that is in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary and is just a natural part of the way the world works. Number 2, anything that's invented between when you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you probably can get a career in it. Number 3, anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things. So we're going to have a talk about maybe things that are natural and progressive and change, but I'd like to introduce each of the panel members to come up in order. Elaine, she's a past member. She's a technology entrepreneur, and now she's the director of the Australian National Fabrication Facility, and amongst other things that they do research into semiconductors and quantum computer research. Next, Jenny, super lawyer, mother, corporate lawyer. She's going to have probably a very different view of how technology actually operates and what are some of the issues that come along. And I think everyone knows Quinn, food importing, vineyards, dried fruits, probably at the other end, but you'd be surprised what Quinn's thinking about in this sort of area. So I guess what we wanted to do today was to keep it sort of fresh, new start to the year, and actually invite each of the panel members to spend maximum of 3 minutes. I'm pretty good with my time, and actually just giving their overview, just as a bit of an entree into the way that they see the world occurring in terms of technology. What are some of the issues? And then we're going to have a bit of a discussion about it, and as always, a couple of questions at the end. So, Elaine, you've got the challenge of being the first person, and that's working. Over to you.
Okay, so I'll lead off. And unsurprisingly, what I'm going to start with is that in the context of technology and businesses, the hugest change ever has got to be AI. And to be honest, we haven't seen anything yet. It's going very fast. It's been around and in development for a long time. And those of you who are history buffs may be surprised or not to know that Alan Turing is considered to be the father of AI. In impact, it's up there with the printing press. It will make that much difference. And of course, it gets things wrong, but we just haven't seen anything yet. It's beginning. So AI has been in development, as said, for a long time. It's recent technology developments that have that you don't need to know about really, that have made it suddenly leap ahead, and you've probably all had to play with ChatGPT. And the way I describe ChatGPT is that it's a bit like Netscape was to the internet. The internet had been around for about 15 years. No one was using it really. Then along came Netscape, and now we would not regard that as the hottest and best search engine. Perhaps most significantly, it's going to change all the other technologies like cybersecurity and everything. In my view, the only thing that will fight AI is AI, and it's already happening there. The IMF, interestingly, reckons that 30% of jobs will be gone in 5 to 10 years. Of course, there'll be new jobs invented. I don't know what they'll be. Our Prime Minister reckons that there's going to be a multi-billion-dollar economy built up around AI. I'm not quite sure what he has in mind. Just a couple of tricky issues, then I'm stopping. The first is that the development that's going quickly will go oh so much faster with quantum computing. So much faster. It will just blow us all away, I think. Secondly, people may not know AI has a terribly complicated supply chain. And perhaps of critical interest in that supply chain are three things. One is very, very low paid workers, and I'm talking 10 cents an hour, training the AI in various spots around the world. One is the power of the data centers in that they're enormous and very centralized. I've suddenly forgotten what the third one was. The third one is silicon chips. And you may or may not be aware that basically all silicon chips in the world are made in Taiwan. Well, 90%, and all the top end of them, which is clearly a geopolitical issue. The third thing that may possibly stop AI is that it is enormously power hungry, uses vast quantities of electricity. And Google's DeepMind uses in 1 year more electricity than the whole of Ireland. So unless we solve the electricity problem, AI will not be the huge thing that we think it will be. So there are just a few things to think about. I have to claim guilt at pushing the panel into talking to AI because I just think it dominates everything else.
Thank you very much, Elaine, for that introduction.
Thanks, Elaine. In terms of how I'd like to set the scene for today's discussion, I was going to share two cases where AI has been used and poses quite a number of challenges for our community and for regulators. So in June last year in New York, there was a New York lawyer named Stephen Schwartz acting for a client in a personal injury case against an airline in America after a metal serving cart hit his knee during a flight. Schwartz did some legal research using ChatGPT without fact-checking the cases that he cited in his brief. And he asked ChatGPT if the cases were real, and ChatGPT was happy enough to say yes. In fact, they are found on reputable legal databases and are completely real. And of course, Stephen didn't go and check whether they were real, and it turned out they were not. And so they were fake cases. He cited them in court. It was incredibly embarrassing. And I think that's a clear demonstration of the misuse of and misunderstanding of what the technology is. It's not a truth filter, it's not a search engine, it's a text generator that works on a probability test. So things that sound plausible is what it produces. So as a lawyer, where those things are really important, when my junior lawyers use ChatGPT, it has to be used in a context where you can verify the answer, or you might already know the answer. So you certainly couldn't rely on it. So it's definitely got some challenges in that regard. The second case I wanted to share, and some of you might have seen on the news last night, that Channel 9, when covering the duck ban issue, had published a photo of Victorian MP Georgie Purcell, which was doctored. So it was a picture where her breasts were enlarged, she had a midriff showing, and it was not she looked at it and she's like, well, that's not actually the original photo, and I've got a tattoo on my stomach and there's no tattoo there. And Channel 9 have claimed that when they took the photo off the internet, they put it through Photoshop and it automatically altered the photo. Now, whether or not we believe Channel 9, one thing it does demonstrate is the technology of AI and how it can create realistic photos and potentially fake news. And one of the challenges we've also had, especially in the football world, we had an AFLW player at our club have a photo of her doctored where a nude photo was created of her. So they put her head on a nude and created this photo and started spreading it on the internet. And that person was charged and was found guilty of creating a fake nude photo. And so we're seeing a lot of nude photo scandals. There's issues in schools and teachers and young kids as well. So this sort of challenge that we're having around pictures that we see on the internet, and Elaine told me that apparently 60% of photos we see on the internet are AI generated. So what is actually real and what is not? So I think that's some really interesting challenges for us as a community about thinking about the ethics behind AI, responsible use, and a challenge for the regulators on how we regulate the use of AI.
Thank you, Jen. I thought I'd start with what is AI. AI is the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual, perception, speech, recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. Modern AI is usually built using machine learning algorithms. These algorithms find complex patterns in data, which can be used to form rules. So it's not as easy as we sometimes think. I'll give you a quote, if I may, from Jerry Harvey, which was done the other day. Billionaire retailer Jerry Harvey says artificial intelligence is a big thing for the future. Huge, but hasn't happened yet. This despite the world's biggest electronics manufacturing touting their use of the much hyped technology on anything from TVs to fridges to space age style robots. So if you haven't joined AI just yet, I think there's still plenty of time based on that comment. I thought I'd just also update you on the way AI impacts businesses. The Scaldo food business, if you like, operates in 3 areas. It has a corporate head office in West Melbourne. It has 3 manufacturing sites in Melbourne and 1 in New Zealand. And we also operate 3 vineyards producing sultanas and currants in Mildura. And you think, well, where does AI fit? Well, certainly in the corporate office area, there is a lot of activity in relation to AI. The amount of data you can pull out and quickly give you information is unbelievable. I'll give you just one quick example. We are the largest peanut importer in the country. We import peanuts from 2 countries, Argentina and Brazil. Now, they're 2 countries where a lot of information is not available readily. Certainly, it's difficult. So we asked AI to assist us in giving the history of the weather, because most of the things, including peanuts, that we deal in are agri-based. Mother Nature plays an incredible performance in how crops are developed and what pricing occurs. So we've got the history of what the weather's been like for the last 10 years, during the crop season and during harvesting season. We've got the details of each of the 2 countries supplied. We've got the details of what pricing over a 10-year period was available, and a lot more data. Now you might say, isn't that sort of thing just available on Google? Let me tell you it's not, unless you want to sit there for hours and hours and go through all that data, and we can refer to it because a lot of our data is also available, but not as quickly as efficiently. If you have used ChatGPT, you can see how quickly and efficiently and why people are in there using that. So in that sense, it works very well. It works very well for us when we're doing production planning. People make mistakes in our production planning, AI does not. So it's a very efficient way of planning your production. It's a very efficient way of promoting the ideas of what's going to happen for long-term sales. We want to know what we're going to be doing in 5 years' time. A great challenge. We always thought we were good at it, but when AI has a number of things it puts into the program and gives us numbers, it develops quite differently. In the areas of our manufacturing sites, of course, it's all about robots. It's not embarrassing to say we employ a lot of people and we'd like to employ less. We'd like them to be more efficient and we'd like them to be working 24/7 if it's possible. Well, humans can't do that, but as we spend money, as we bring in technology, those opportunities are there, and we've seen the benefit of it. In relation to the farms, well, that's really interesting because, again, it's people, people, people. It's people putting bums on tractors. It's people that you're using to handpick the various products. We do sultanas and currants. Again, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to automate. And, of course, AI plays an important part in all of those technologies. So from where we are sitting, we are slow, not as slow as maybe where our billionaire Harvey Norman is talking about, but we're slowly edging into the AI capabilities. But, we've got to have the ability to ensure we take advantage of it, and that, I think Jenny pointed out, you need to verify. Because if you want to go in there and go to ChatGPT and say, who's Skelzo Foods, let me tell you, it's not all correct. So, we need to be very, very careful. Not as bad as the photos, but you wouldn't then want to go and sort of, refer to, someone in relation to what we do. And if you go in and ask about individuals, that's even more funny. It's amazing. Some of the stuff is accurate, but there's a lot of stuff because it's just picking out sometimes, similar names, similar backgrounds. So AI is a very dangerous tool, even in the simplistic way. On the other hand, Karen keeps sort of telling us just now, as we're sitting next to her, that she's enjoying the value of using AI, and I think it's made life a little easier for her. So there's no question it's here, and it's going to be very, very successful. Thank you.
Such an interesting topic, isn't it, this one? It's so fascinating, so many elements of it. And I think in a lot of my work, I'm dealing with change. And I'm getting more and more convinced that as you go through change, it actually gets worse for a period of time. Because you're doing your groove, and it's all good, and you've got your routine, and then you've got to go and do something different. And hopefully that change actually gets better over time because it will become quicker, cheaper or faster. But there is this period where people actually need to make sense of the change, of why are we doing this sort of change. So we've put a few questions together to talk about probably the darker side, this is not good and all of that. And I think that's an important place to start, to actually make sense of what is this AI thing and what is actually going to be happening. So I've got a couple of questions. And Elaine, I might start with you in terms of kicking it off. I'm going to talk about security and privacy. And I guess, what are some of the most significant security and privacy concerns associated with emerging technologies, such as AI?
I think with AI, and I have a much different view to the speed to Quinn. And quick aside there, that in the 1950s, when the transistor was developed, it was predicted that the cost would go down by half and the number of transistors on a chip would double every year. That was in the 1950s. You have 12 billion transistors on your mobile phone. 12 billion. So it will go fast, and it will be a huge challenge in security. So just a statement there is that in thinking about that is that everything that is on the internet now is in an AI database, be owned by Google or Meta or Adobe. But everything that there ever has been and ever was and ever is in those databases. If you're a picture of a grandchild, anything, it's on there. So that means that it's going to be very clever at picking passwords. If you have a company, it will be hacked. So my advice would be, you're not going to stop it. You will be hacked at some point. You must have a really, really good plan of what you're going to do when that happens. And don't leave it to the IT department. It's a corporate plan.
I guess I think about it from a legal perspective. There is sort of, at the moment, I think people don't quite understand the technology. So a lot of us don't even know how we're feeding these models and who owns that information. ChatGPT is basically trained on the global internet of all the information that's out there. Some of it is also information when we input things in, are we contributing and training that, and that personal information, how is that being used? So I think there's still a lot of, I think from a regulator's point of view, they don't quite understand what that all means. And there's not like a clear terms and conditions up front about what the use of ChatGPT involves. So at work, we've taken a conservative approach where you are not to input client details into ChatGPT, very carefully only putting public information in there. But it's a very interesting ethical question around privacy and who owns the information, because it's certainly a fascinating one, which I think we all need to figure out at some point.
It's really going to be very challenging. Listening to some of the stories that some of our younger brigade at Skelzo are up to, they're trying to teach ChatGPT the way they think and the way they act. So I think it's very important to remember that although it's early, and I don't know, Elaine, what your thoughts are, but there does seem to be a possibility of being able to, with data and information that you keep feeding into, to be able to change and potentially even modify the way it feeds back information. Now, I don't know if it's just the usefulness of some of our people who are claiming that they're sort of achieving this, but I assume that if you're playing this game long enough and hard enough, and you keep repeating some of the information that you're feeding into it, does it have the ability to be able to interpret from that information that's been fed back?
Actually, I think it's a really good point, and perhaps I'll answer it by saying that at OpenAI, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, they are wondering why it's getting more things wrong and saying it's already kind of escaped in terms of trainability. They're not in control anymore. And I think that that's because there are people like Quinn's team fiddling at the ends as one possibility.
Thanks, team. Just an interesting sort of side note, it's a personal story on this one about my two children and what they get up to with technology. And the 15-year-old's a boy and the 12-year-old's a girl. And somehow the 12-year-old worked out if she lifted her fringe, she sort of put a boy scowl on and looked at the phone, it would think it was her brother. It's been the best party trick for her all summer. He got a haircut recently. Don't work anymore. But I think that's interesting, isn't it? That a 15-year-old versus a 12-year-old actually play around with these sort of things and are doing it. It was just a bit of fun. But you said, you've got too much time on your hands. How the hell did you work that out by doing these different facial recognitions? And why did you want to do that? And I think this is the inquisitive side. Another sort of fact that I heard about on a podcast last week was, with the old circuit boards, like in an old radio, you'd have your little circuit boards. If you pick up your phone and try to replicate the processor that you've got in there using that old technology, do you know how big that circuit board would actually be? Like the old technology where you welded it on and fiddled around and all that? About the size of a large international airport. That's how small what Elaine was sort of saying these things are getting. And to actually make them now, they actually have to not actually have contact, they actually have to use magnets to actually create the technology to work. It's so fine and so amazing, and it's in every one of our phones here and every computer that we're working on. That's how fast this technology is moving ahead. It's almost like we are in the science fiction and George Jetson's already here. I want to talk about organisations though. And I guess, Quinn, I'd like to start with you on this one, and we'll sort of come back the other way now. How do organisations ensure they're not being left behind by their competitors in terms of adopting or rejecting these new technologies?
I think we're rather fortunate in Australia. Technology is something that the Australian community, including your 15-year-old and 12-year-old, pick up pretty quickly. So in some ways, the fact that you need to keep an eye on your competitors is important, because certainly it's an incredible advantage if someone's out there way ahead of you. What we're trying to do is to try to get reaction mainly from the customer base. I mean, at the end of the day, there are three components to what we do. One's us, the other's a product, and the other is a customer. The customers sometimes are very much underestimated in the information they can feed back. So we're continually, if you like, talking, and we're fortunate in the business that we are dealing with the global food manufacturers and the major retailers here, who are never in doubt about giving you a cop-out if somewhere along the line you don't have a way of presenting yourself, either in product or service, that fits into the modern term. So some of it is forced on you. So look out, as customers will come back and make more demands. And of course, a competitor, big or small, is always interested to get an advantage. And so I think it's compulsory that we as an organisation, and I'm pleased to hear your comment to some extent, Elaine, because we probably missed that some of these challenges are corporate-based. They're not IT-based. We've got a few people in our IT department, but goodness sake, I don't think we would leave it to them to be making corporate decisions, let alone policy, in how we should manage IT, even though we've got a great resource there. So really, I think, like a lot of this technology, the board and the people who are making the decisions and running the ship have got to take more accountability. And we know that we are very slow, and I'm not embarrassed to make that comment in relation to myself and not point that comment to other people. So it's a great challenge, Nick.
I guess I'll sort of comment on this from a board perspective. Sitting on a number of boards, thinking about how we embrace new technology, there's obviously, it's sort of linked to your risk appetite and your sense of caution, particularly around cyber risk. And recently, the Victorian government banned the use of TikTok for all state government agencies. And being on the board of Vic Screen and Arts Agency, that was quite a challenging thing to have a complete ban. It meant that none of our staff could access TikTok when a lot of our younger Victorians, millennials and Gen Z are engaging on TikTok. So not having that platform is actually a challenge for someone like an arts agency where we do need to be on those platforms. So we're in a process of now trying to manage that risk and have some limited access to TikTok. But I think a complete ban of technology when there's a cyber risk issue is not always practical because the rest of the world is moving on. And I think people won't necessarily get replaced by AI, but people who don't understand technology will get replaced by AI. And I think it's important for us to embrace technology and how we can use it, even if there is some risks, especially because TikTok is Chinese owned and there was concerns around spying and things like that. I think there's just got to be better cyber security and better resilience to those risks rather than completely banning it.
Great answers. Not a lot to add, but I would probably say I don't think organisations can keep up, which may not be very optimistic. But I think that there are two things that are very important. One is that what the technologies that an organisation adopts should be what's best for the business, which I think is really what Quinn was saying. And at board level, that's what you're looking at is what are the risks of not using a technology, what are the benefits of using a technology, but how can we make our business better? And the reason that the world's chips are all made in Taiwan is because in the early days of chip manufacture, the workers in the US were too expensive. So someone had the bright idea, one of which was TI actually, of moving manufacturing to Southeast Asia, and that's where it stayed. If anyone thinks we ought to be making chips in Australia, I should say it's a lead time of about 3 years and about $15 billion. But the Americans are going to do it. The other, so one is I don't think you can, but use the right strategy. The other is I absolutely agree about risk matrix. And the other thing I'd say is really important is your organisation must have someone in it who's keeping an eye on what's going on. Again, I would say probably not someone in IT, someone more generalist, who's got a good overview of both business and technologies. And it's their role to make sure they know what's going on and to make sure the CEO and the board are informed.
Fantastic. I think we might just have one more question before we hand over to the floor for any questions. I had this great idea. Wouldn't it be great to put the questions in and see what the AI came up with the response for? But we're humans and we're still here. Probably on this sort of focus of the negative side of changing technologies. And Jenny, I'd be keen to start with you, maybe because I'm married to a lawyer as well, and we talk about risk and challenges. So how can organisations balance the potential benefits of the technology with the risks and challenges?
Yeah, so I guess the gains, we haven't really seen the gains of AI for the legal profession. I think we are very a conservative bunch, and we are probably not as agile as some other areas. Like I think in business, we've seen greater gains in AI. So I think for us, we have been very cautious. And also, I think the way that our work, like in terms of our work, there's sort of evolutions of models which are more domain-based and focused on legal information. So I think the first version of ChatGPT they sort of did a study over passing the bar exam. And I think the ChatGPT 4 is the first one to pass the US bar exam. So it's become even more and more sophisticated as it's been growing. And I think for the legal profession, we're looking to see, I guess, a more evolved version that is more specifically legal focused. And I think that's the next phase of what we're going to see. We're going to see models which are more focused on particular specialties and practice. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And I think, so I think from the gains perspective, it's something we haven't quite seen, and particularly the legal profession is very, very conservative.
I might just leave it there and we can hand over to the floor if there are any questions. Hands up, please, for anyone.
Thank you, panel. David here. First question, I've got 3 questions. They're intimate. First of all, what's going to happen with America and China going to war over Taiwan? Second question is, would AI be able to find strategies for preventing that war? And thirdly, would AI find strategies for preventing that AI finding strategies?
Elaine, all yours.
I think on the last 2, you're right. On the first one, if China and America go to war, America will be pulled up in its very, very quickly, because they will run out of silicon chips very, very quickly. China already has that dominance over Taiwan and is well ahead in making chips themselves. Many of you will be aware that Biden recently passed what's called the CHIP Act, which has nothing to do with your Friday night dinner, where he's putting billions, and I can't remember how many billions, someone might remember, into building silicon fabrication in the US. We have none in Australia. We have the research knowledge. We don't have the fab.
Long time no see. How you
That's what will
doing? What are
happen,
you doing, mate?
is
What are you
that
doing?
it will come to
Just,
a
just sitting
grinding
in
halt with lack
the
of
lobby
silicon.
waiting for someone to give me a job. Yeah.
Peter.
Peter here. How likely do you think that AI will become an existential threat to human life?
Elaine.
I think it could swing either way. I think we've got other existential threats that AI could potentially solve if we ever take any notice of it. Building on Jenny's comment about passing bar exams, the current version of GPT 3.5 is measured as having an IQ of 90% in the top 10 percentile, basically, so better than 90% of the population. So AI is probably best equipped to solve that, but yes, it could well run things, and life will be very different.
Thank you, Bill, for those insights. It sounds like AI is going to be a global movement affecting virtual humans. Through Rotary is a global movement, and we're looking to look at the world. What's the role of Rotary to make sure that AI has the best possibility?
Go on, Quinn.
That's a good question, Richard. I think that the interest in something like this today clearly indicates that Rotary has to play a part. Not all of AI is going to be beneficial to the parts of the world where Rotary is very involved and currently doing some damn good work. But it will also help those countries. So if it is the underdeveloped worlds where polio is a problem or malaria is a problem, AI will help. So I'd like to believe that the so-called leaders of the gates of the world recognise that AI will be just as important as polio and malaria. So I'm rooting for, Rotary to be heavily involved in the promotion of AI.
Thanks, panel, and thanks for the questions today. A quote by Arthur C. Clarke, writer of 2001, a science fiction writer: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." This quote is famous because it captures the essence of technology. It's so powerful and mysterious that it can actually seem like magic. But it also reminds us that technology can be used for good and for evil. Just like magic can be used to heal or harm, Technology can be used to solve problems or create new ones. It is up to us to use the technology responsibly and ethically. Please join me in thanking the panel today.